Good morning. I'm going to call to order the City Rehoboth Beach Boardwalk and Beach Committee at 9:06 a.m. I'd like to welcome everybody to this committee meeting. And for those members of the public here, feel free to speak up at any time just by raising your hand. Because right now there is nobody in the member of the public except for Kevin. As far as roll call, I'm going to make it simple. I'm Stan Mills, Chair of the Boardwalk and Beach Committee. And going down this way, we've got President Brian Hancock, and with Steve Curson, Gary Glass, and on the right side end is Frank Cole. Welcome everybody. That means that we have 5 members here, so we do have a quorum and are able to conduct business. We want to start out with approval of the minutes. They were distributed earlier as a support packet to everybody. And before we go on to that, I would just like to say that the current system for support documents, embedding support documents in the agenda with links or directly embedded is, I think, working fantastically. And it takes labor and time to do that, and I want to thank Ann Womack for doing that. Because everybody, including the public, is able to go online and look at the committee agenda for this and other commissions, boards, and committees, that when supporting documents are ready, then they're available for everybody to see prior to a meeting. So thank you, Ann. Thank you for that program. We're going to go back to approval of the minutes. They were distributed earlier. This is consideration of approval of the minutes for November 18th, 2019. If we're ready, I'd like a motion to approve in a second.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Who was that, Gary?
Gary
and Steve a second. Is there any discussion? So there weren't any notes or errors noted. If not, we'll call the question. All those in favor of approval of the minutes for November 18th as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed. And so we have those minutes approved. Just want to make note that entering the room is City Manager Sharon Lynn, welcome, and also the Director of Public Works, Kevin Williams, is here with us today. Thank you for coming. Otherwise, we would be empty and void of anybody sitting there and watching us. Thank you very much. We're going to do this a little out of sequence because City Manager Sharon Lynn and Kevin Williams have to leave at us a little early. So we'll do a couple topics while they're here in front of them. One of them is, the next thing we'll go to is the Lake Gerar Tot Lot, also known as the Lake Gerar Masterpla. This is the area shown in your document, Google Earth map of the entire vicinity that the master plan takes place. And then the next document in your packet is a master plan rendering. This rendering was part of a presentation to the Mayor and Commissioners on December 9th, where it was explained lengthier than I'm going to do it. Kevin, you're welcome to chime in here, but to be brief, the Tot Lot area that is depicted in the center here, top center, is deteriorating, is in disrepair, needs to be updated to comply with ADA standards. And so the city took it upon them some time ago to start and hire a parks person to come in and look at all the parks. And they evaluated that and decided to come up with a master plan for the entire vicinity there, in part based upon recommendations from this committee that we take a look at the north terminus of the boardwalk and the bicycle routing and pedestrian routing there, the parking at Mariners Square, our recommendation for consideration of a restroom somewhere in the north area, And you can see the master plan that they came up with. So this is in its infancy. The main purpose of this, by recollection, Kevin, is to site the tot lot rather than expanding the tot lot into one area or the other without consideration of these other components. They did it all at once. So this is in front of the mayor and commissioners. There was really not any feedback that I recall at that meeting, because this was just an introductory meeting. And why I put it on here is to introduce it to you all, to introduce that some of our recommendations are being listened to, and to ask you if y'all have any feedback on it. Specific feedback specific to our recommendations, because we really don't have any say-so in the dog park that's proposed here, or the amphitheater or anything. Anybody have any comments to throw out, or?
Have we any indication as to cost? No, not at this time.
Anybody? Well, what I'd like to offer, see if y'all agree or not, is that it's got a restroom component to it. And while I think it's beyond this committee to say that's the perfect spot for a restroom, it does fulfill our recommendation that additional restroom facility be sited in the north area. Additionally, from what I can see, it's got new pedestrian pathways and bicycle pathways to get from the boardwalk to the park, which would mean that it facilitates getting people from the beach boardwalk to the restroom facility. So I think that's a good thing. The area up here, I'm making two notes. Our committee had recommended something with bicycle and pedestrian routing up here, that we get people on and off in this corner here. And I still believe that before they go forward with this, the city might want to consider whether they want that as a vehicular entrance and exit for vehicles, trash trucks, and bicycles. And what they have here is the bicycle and pedestrian boulevard that puts people out and lets people access it right at the blind corner there, and everything. That, to me, kind of violates our philosophy of the safety issue.
Can you make that cursor bigger? It's hard to see.
This cursor,
Well, the one you were just moving around.
I have no idea how to do that.
Okay.
So, Stan, those green circles would be trees or shrubbery of some kind?
Yeah.
I think that might create a problem with line of sight issues, aesthetic issues, maybe blocking the view to the boardwalk in one of the prettiest vistas in the town, and also take up space that might be better dedicated to having a wide, clean, open, accessible bike path or pedestrian path, whatever it's going to be there. It would seem to me that the trees or the greenery there might take up a lot of space that would be unnecessary.
Mm-hmm. Kind of out of our realm a little bit, but there are hundreds of people that park up there specifically so they can see the ocean, and this would not do that. But again, I guess my biggest thing with this is putting people out at the busiest place, which is right. Can you see right up there? Can you see it?
Stan, I looked at this briefly, and I don't want to speak out of turn. I didn't enter these into the supporting documents, but if you want to pass these down, it's basically my first concern with the trees is kind of illustrated in this picture here, which is it's a real picture from, I think, the UK, and you'll notice they do their bike paths in pink. And the more I started looking at bike paths and bike lanes across the country, the more I found a lot of them are going towards a green kind of, they're making the paths green. So it's a greenway, literally green colored pavements. And it occurred to me it might be useful at that stress point there, right where Lake Avenue turns into Surf Avenue. I think we've identified as a potentially hazardous section of town for pedestrians and cyclists.
Rather than, I can either pass these on as recommendations or just here's what came up at the meeting by individuals and pass that on, and so they can choose to listen to it or not. I do recall some previous bicycle reports or something from Kathy Osterholm's Street Transportation Committee actually showing some bicycle paths green, like
Right,
the
yeah.
intersection of Henlopen and Surf Avenue or something.
I just printed those out, and this may be beyond the boardwalk, but it might be worth passing along the Streets and Transportation.
Okay.
I thought.
Okay, we can do that. Kevin, did you want to have any other input or something? Again, we're.
Yeah, I don't know that we're far enough along to say, well, we don't want trees on that. I mean, it's just kind of a concept of what we want to try to get to.
All right.
The intent would be that, we'll have a working group that comes together to help massage that master plan to get something that would be most acceptable to the most number. So.
Very good. All right, anything else? Thank you very much.
The other thing was really the talk with the architect is try to make that kind of a gateway to the north end of the boardwalk. Right now, you just kind of stumble upon it, you go through concrete, the boards, and it's kind of a mess down there. So just the way, there's your gateway coming in.
And I would add that, we've heard from your committee, from Streets and Transportation numerous times. And this, so the first thing is, in the next fiscal year budget cycle, is that we need to replace the playground equipment. That's imperative because we had a professional come in and do a study of all of our equipment and all of our parks. And that was foremost on his list, that equipment needs to be replaced. So in doing that and putting that into the budget, we took a look at everyone's suggestions. And, this again is a concept plan. If the commissioner should approve this in the next fiscal year budget to go further with the conceptual piece of it and then actually go to some kind of formal sketch, as Kevin said, we'll have a working group put together because I know folks at the Henlopen condos might have some suggestions or even opposition to some of what we're trying to do. But that's all. We thought it was a suggestion and wanted certainly your feedback as well.
Very good. Anything else? If not, we'll close out of that. And the next topic I wanted to go to was the kind of looking at and making recommendations on coloration of the trash cans, recycle bins, type of bins, on things. Excuse me. If you recall, a year and a half ago, when we first started on trash and getting getting a mini vehicle on the boardwalk, getting the big trash truck off, at one point we talked about the blue trash cans kind of dominate the scenery and being ugly or something. But out of that conversation, we decided to defer until a future date, excuse me, when we would be looking at recycling. And we, of course, put off recycling till we could resolve the trash collection thing. Now we're at a point where the mayor and commissioners have charged the city administration with looking into putting recycling on the boardwalk. Is it just the boardwalk? Not the beach also at this time, just the boardwalk at this time. And so in discussions with the Director of Public Works, Kevin Williams, we painted some of the barrels, if you recall, earlier, and then we brought them down to the boardwalk and took a series of photos. So with some different combinations to see if we could get your recommendations. If you recall, the 2003 report that we had, gave some proposals. This is the system they had back in 2003. Blue can for aluminum recycling, blue can for plastic bottle recycling, blue trash can with this setup. And then if you recall also, page 47. Part of the recommendations were how to do a better job, and it included some a recommendation for putting proper signage on the top of the recycle bin. So what we want to do is take a look at the options here and see if we can come up with recommendations for the city. We could certainly leave everything alone, which means this type of setup plus the blue recycle bin. But the thought is maybe we could, and I guess in my mind, maybe we can upscale everything a little bit with prettier color combination. And in your handout, you'll see that I divided this up into three components for the trash bin. You've got a lid, which is the new ones we're buying are gray in color. The jury's out whether we can buy black ones or not, so that's maybe still a possibility. We can, so we can get black or gray. The second component is the trash bag because it hangs down so far. It hangs down almost a foot and a half sometimes when they pull it on. And they, of course, come in gray or black. Could they also come in gray? Have you?
Have not found.
Have not, yeah. So the possibility that they could be in gray. And then you've got the can component there. So that's kind of a working system. The city gets the metal trash barrels free, and so they want to stick with that trash can system. This kind of component is just the colors might change. In your packet, I just wanted to show you what our typical residential recycle bin is. The reason why I put that in there really is just to show you the dark blue color and the yellow lid that seems to be generally a standard for the industry to identify recycling. And this slide shows a little different than what you all have, but just to go through them real quick, what we tried to do is show a different color combination trash with the recycle bin. And you've got different recycle bin options. You've got the barrel, 55-gallon barrel with some kind of lid, and we just went and grabbed one of the residential lids. So this is not what it is. It would be a round lid to go on there and it would be yellow. Yes, Gary?
So the gray lid that's on the other one where you have that door that you throw trash into, can you replace that door with just a hole, like for recycled cans and bottles only? I mean, if you could get my thinking was if you can get a lid just like that one, but instead of a flopping door, have a panel with a hole in it for bottles and cups and cans. Anyway, that's just a thought. I don't know if you've
seen one, but
I just thought I've seen them at other places, but maybe not.
Certainly can. I would say the one fault in that thinking, however, is that if the flap still works, then you facilitate. Even if you got the hole in the flap, if the flap still works, then you're facilitating more trash and bigger things being put in
No, but you
there.
would seal it off. I mean, it would be a fixed panel. It wouldn't be a open and closed door. You would just push the bottle through the hole, but it would be a top that looks similar, and you would just do different colors with the tops. But anyway, that's just a thought.
Later, I'll look up some other trash cans because the one in that slideshow, it's got one like that, for instance.
Yeah.
So it could be like that.
Just an idea.
Personally, I guess I like the more flat lid because it bigger signage on what can and can't go in there. That's all. So I think one of the first things maybe we could decide is, do we want, besides the coloration, that'll be next, is can we look at it as what kind of recycle bin do we want and lid perhaps? Kevin, you were with me when we were setting those out. You were thinking for logistics and pricing, perhaps the 55-gallon drum that matched the other 55-gallon drum.
To me, it looked a lot better than 55-gallon drum next to that, recycle can.
Now, this recycle bin could also, it's plastic, but could also be bigger, possibly.
You would think, but when you start checking off the other requirements you need to have, weight, you want it heavy enough that the wind's not gonna blow it over, but not too heavy that the guys can't pick up and haul away. You have a million different trash cans, but there aren't that many that kind of check those other boxes that are required. So that, after quite a bit of research, was the closest thing volume-wise, doing, the 55-gallon kind of capacity.
Question, would you be able to paint those different colors so you could set up some kind of a standardized colored scheme that people could get used to?
We can paint everything,
Takes manpower and,
correct.
Well, that's one of the things we're looking at. And as far as what I'd like to do is for the recycle bin, can we decide on or agree with Kevin on a 55-gallon metal drum? And if not, then speak up.
I think from what I've heard people say about the brand for the city, people are so used to seeing, the older people that come here and grew up coming here, so used to seeing that blue can when they look at pictures and stuff. I don't have any problem with the 55-gallon drums. Even if we put the standard light blue and a green or yellow can, and we paint it next to it so that we can differentiate between trash and recycle. But I'm fine with the 55-gallon.
Okay,
The cost you can't beat.
everybody,
Kevin, what colors do they come in?
oh, wait. Are we fine with the 55-gallon can over the smaller standardized plastic?
If that's the only option, yes, but personally, I hate these 55-gallon drums. It's like a biohazard type industrial look on the boardwalk. That's just not family friendly. I know we've got an ethical duty to recycle and take up trash, but 55-gallon drums, it looks like behind a restaurant. You see the grease traps behind the restaurants and things like this.
Well, it does have the weight on it for the
Yeah,
boardwalk. So that does have a positive.
The other option is to put them in some kind of enclosure, so you physically don't see them, but they're still accessible.
If you looked at the category of trash cans on the slideshow, then you'll see there's 100 different options.
But that trash can that you have out there by Rehoboth Avenue that has the decorative trash can, those get quite expensive, don't they? I think that one was $300.
$1,600.
$1,600, not even $300, yeah. So I mean,
And it's a smaller capacity. And see,
Right.
so again,
How much that one?
these
the
have
metal one with the
55-gallon capacity is pretty phenomenal.
They're off with the top. It's got a
What,
battery.
what happens to the recycling? It goes to a recycling centre. Does somebody then buy it from the city? Or do we just donate it to a recycling company?
We take it to the Delaware Solid Waste Authority.
I saw it last night, or 2 nights
And
ago.
we don't get any kind of,
We pay to take it.
yeah,
I don't see it.
because I'd like to see the recycling company pay for the recycling containers. They're the people that are getting the,
Well, we are the recycling company, right? I mean, we are the recycling company.
Stan, I agree a little bit with Brian. Aesthetically, I think they're kind of challenged. Maybe there's a way to jazz them up or do a stencil or some kind of wrap to make them more appealing visually. But on the other hand, from a practical standpoint, they're economical, number one, and they don't blow away in the wind. And they're a known quantity. I mean, you know what you're going to get when you're dealing with these cans because the city's been using them for many years. I guess
but
my
there's lots
feeling
of
is,
options. There's concrete with like a pebble dash or a stone effect on the outside that you see in the cities. You can paint it, you can decorate it, you could put a Christmas tree on the top, but it would still be a 50-gallon drum with a plastic bag inside of it. And that's not Rehoboth, I don't think. I think we're better than 55-gallon drums.
I agree. I just think someone with a little bit of artistic vision could come up with a way of sprucing these things up, either by color contrast or maybe the city logo is on the trash can and just find some way to make them more visually appealing, while at the same time, you know, this is gonna be the least expensive thing that the city can do, is to continue to use the 55-gallon drums.
And I think that's the direction I'm going, you know, Kevin needs an answer within the next month or so, because he's got hundred some of these to do. But if you look at the slides real quick, at some of the options,
Yeah.
you know, there's an option,
That's terrible.
you know, that type of thing.
If you, can you go back 3 or 4 slides? Go back again to the green one. That's not too, that looks as though they should be there, they serve the purpose, and they're purpose built for the purpose that they need to do. A 55-gallon drum is a 55-gallon drum that you put grease in, you put everything else in. These containers are purpose built, and I know there's a cost issue there. You know, if we can get 55-gallon drums free, and the city can't afford to do anything else, then you know that's where we are.
This is kind of the color scheme I get, and but again, I guess I'm so used to 21 years of looking at the 55-gallon drums, I'm comfortable with doing it with colors, and as long as they're maintained and painted and aren't rusting and everything. Because we're not entertaining 125 new trash barrels. You know, that's rather costly. So we want to try to use what we have, which means leaving a 55-gallon drum, which means changing the coloration of the trash system, if you will.
Can we slowly phase out the 50-gallon drums? Spread the cost over
Well,
5 years?
Well, now see, Seagirt is a town smaller than Rehoboth, so the population is probably less. These are less than 55 gallons, say they're 32 gallon. And so can you imagine having to empty them with twice the frequency? So again, there's trade-offs, and that's where I guess I hear you, but I also keep coming back to maybe what Frank said, that, you know, with painting or decals or something to make them look a little nicer. You know, maybe, in fact, I don't have it here, but I have one that I'll send to you that's got decorations on it. I mean, I don't think I have it on here.
Question, Kevin, what would be the possibility of getting a plastic sleeve, just like made almost with some kind of decoration on it, like about the city robe, and just sliding it over the trash can, and that way you would also hide the trash bag that you put down. So they would just lift the sleeve up, pick up the bag of trash, and then slip the sleeve back over, and it would be light. I mean, you'd have to have it made. It would have to be custom made.
Right, so
But-
and that would be the answer to everything you suggest, right? Well, it doesn't look as nice as it could. Okay, great. But how much is the committee gonna recommend to the board to approve to spend on recycling on the board, or trash collection on the board?
That's right, yeah.
The can, the one blue plastic can we bought as kind of a sample to use.
Look at that before.
That's what I was
before
thinking
I-
about,
So
yeah.
that's- I'm guessing that can's probably, and lid is probably 600, 650
For one can?
per. Because the little one, we bought it for 50 gallons or whatever it was with the lid, was $450.
Yeah, I mean,
So when we looked at that and said, okay, times 125, times 250, because if you're gonna try to do trash and recycling so that they're kind of looking the same, that's fine, maybe we can do that. But somebody's gotta ask the board that says, yeah, we're willing to spend, you know, a couple $100,000
Right.
on recycling and not 25,000 or 20,000.
But there's also something that you mentioned back during the trash time, and that is the labor intensiveness for some of this.
that's right.
If you're asking to do something like that that's more cosmetic and looks nicer, however, it's one more step for our guys to do,
It would be.
then that's
And what do we,
maybe not realistic.
Right, and so what I was trying to do is address the aesthetic problem in a more responsible way. We could then change that sleeve if we wanted to and give it a different look, different
So if you
pictures.
remember, go back to the big bellies and that skin. we call it
Exactly,
big
that's what
bellies.
made me think about it.
It's beautiful,
Yes,
right? But, you know, to do that on 250 cans.
yes.
Again,
It's
you
just,
do it first to get it out there, it looks great. You have some of the maintenance of them and putting new ones on, that kind of thing. So
Kevin, if we pressed you hard, would you say that might be a good idea to keep it simple?
certainly because we're trying it, right? And it's, we're gonna try recycling on the boardwalk. We haven't done it for quite a while now. We're hopeful that it'll work. We're hopeful people will abide by it and not contaminate this stuff. So at this point, you know, before you throw a couple 100,000 at it, I think 2025, whatever, let's get it out there, let's try it, see how it goes. And then maybe down the road say, all right, let's make them look beautiful. Let's go buy matching cans from some manufacturer that does this for, you know, whatever.
It occurs to me that that might be the best plan of action, and then maybe at a future date in future years, you want to do something like, you know, come up with a logo for the boardwalk and tie everything in together. You know, tie the trash cans and the beach rules signs, and everything will have like a uniform look and feel. But maybe that's a little bit beyond what we can do this year, and what should be done, you know, in the initial phase of rolling out the recycling.
so this is gonna be a test of like 25 trash cans to see how it goes?
No, we're going full.
Full length of the boardwalk.
So we're going with
Okay,
125,
okay, okay.
is roughly the number.
Interesting, okay,
So
okay.
it'll be a, you know, a side by side, which is kind of why we rolled them out there together. Okay, let's see what we like or don't like.
So wow, so you'd have 200, if we changed all the trash cans and you had 125 recycle cans and 125 trash cans, you're talking 250, 300 trash cans.
Correct.
Yeah,
And we're still gonna, I assume, we're not really talking about the beach yet either. So there's another.
That's right.
125 there if you're trying to tie that book even together.
If you put
But
recycle
but that's a future phase.
Correct, right.
We're only looking at the entirety of the boardwalk at this time.
for the
So I guess I come back reading Frank's notes and Kevin's is keep it simple. I come back to this system here, I guess. If y'all are in agreement, then we would go with a 55-gallon drum, and I personally like this coloration scheme because it matches our residential, and it's a darker blue rather than the light blue. Is that all right? Any,
Okay, consistency is good.
we can get one thing crossed off our list.
Yeah, yeah.
So we'll go with the barrel. The coloration would be to match our existing residential
Yeah,
cans, so
yeah.
that gets rid of this. Well, that's the coloration, but that's not the kind of can. So now we're looking at 4 different options. One would be a gray lid, black and black. And you've got this in your documents there. Another option would be, this is a charcoal, it's a little darker gray. So it somewhat matches the lids that come in a dark gray, so gray, black. Now, one possibility is that if we find gray trash bags, then we could have gray, which I think I kind of like. But other option is a light gray, and it's hard to tell, but this is a little lighter gray. It kind of matches the light post. So you've kind of got a charcoal gray, a black, a light gray option, and then you've got the tan. Tan was more of a color actually utilized in the parks. You know, we used to have these bright blue cans in the park, like Gerar Park and Silver Lake Park. And they were 15 years ago painted tan to kind of blend in, give you more of a natural woodsy feel. I'm getting turned up noses at tan. Do we want to just eliminate that one?
You can get tan trash liners very easily. It's one
Well, one thing he's checking into is, can we get them in 55-gallon size with the correct mill thickness and the correct puncture proofness? There's gauge for it so that it meets all our criteria.
I think you can. I'm not a big fan of the tan, but the one advantage is I'm pretty sure you can find a trash liner very easily that meets all those criteria because I use them personally. So.
I think the fewer color combinations, the better.
I agree, I agree.
Dark gray, black, or dark gray, dark gray.
Something like this.
Yeah. Well, that dark,
This is the
whatever matches the top.
This is the charcoal gray that somewhat matches the top.
Yeah.
So you're saying that if we can get the bag gray, go,
Regardless of what color the bag is, either black or charcoal.
Uh-huh.
I think the top and the bottom would be better looking matching.
Guess they'd have to paint the top.
Seems a grey blends in with the boardwalk
kind of our
itself.
color theme for
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
would you prefer the gray bags over the black?
If they're obtainable, I think that would make a good idea.
The answer, yeah, you said,
I don't think it's a deal breaker for the other colors, but yeah.
okay, so we're looking at this color combination, the preference would be gray if you can get it. And this with a yellow top, appropriate top,
And the darker blue.
the dark
I
blue.
think your next slide has that layout, not that.
If,
Up
if,
to.
that's the color combination.
Up to has, yeah, up, down one. Right there.
Okay, so that's the color combination, not quite the right thing. Now remember, this one is going to have a bag, but it's gonna be a clear bag. And then they're gonna take it and empty it out of the bag, but the clear allows them to look inside, monitor it. So you're still gonna have this ugly
If we
plastic thing hanging down.
If we did clear there, why wouldn't we do, could we do clear on the other one, and then we don't have to worry about the
You
color?
don't, no, you don't
You don't wanna see the trash.
You don't want trash
This
and
one.
recycling in the same type of bag.
Okay.
We want to keep them segregated.
Is it 6 mil plastic?
I think it's like, two.
2 mil?
1.8 or 2. What we're using now in the black.
You know, I'd caution the city with regards to the recycling. I can tell you now, a lot of the boardwalk vendors will be using those to get rid of their cardboard.
Yeah,
Well,
but
they would take,
remember, we only have the 4-inch hole.
Right.
Now, they can lift it off, unfortunately,
Mhm.
but we would have to have some vigilance there because we're only asking for plastic bottles and aluminum cans.
Not
Nothing else.
cardboard.
Nothing else.
Right.
Nothing else.
I think that gray with the gray top looks the best because it looks like the can and the top were made for each other.
Yeah.
That were
Yeah,
originally
It blends in.
not thrown together.
Mhm.
So I don't know that we need a vote, but it would seem to be an agreement for this color combination with a push for the gray bag if possible. In fact, even if the gray bags are possible, Mike Peterman said they probably have a year's worth of black bags to use up first. So they would use them up and then future ordering could be gray. And then for the recycle bin would be the 55-gallon drum and the dark blue to match the residential recycling bin, and then a appropriate top that's likely flat or whatever with the circle on it. And then we could consider in future years putting a decal on them or something decorative on them or something like that.
So the light blue would go away completely with this scenario.
Yes, because it would be this darker blue color.
How do you feel about the gray on the beach? Or would you want to keep the lighter blue on the beach?
I'd go 10 on the beach.
I think the
Blend
gray
with the sun.
would be nice because it's not going to stand out. It's going to kind of blend in maybe with the, sounds crazy, but the color of the oceans. You're not going to see these ugly trash cans, every 25 yards or whatever it is.
Well, I think, remember this, according to the 2003 study, the lid here should have the word trash on it, just as an additional reminder to people. And then, of course, this one says recyclables. But there is something, I guess, for, even though the beach gray doesn't seem to fit the beach, there's something to be said, I think, for consistency, that you've got the same color combination on the boardwalk as you will have on the beach. And that's yet to be decided, but that's not gonna happen this year.
On the beach, recycling on the beach,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, so that would be in a future year.
And the beach cans sit up against the snow fence, so the gray would kind of blend in with the color from looking there, the color of the snow fence. They don't sit out on the beach itself.
See, this,
I like the ability to just think, oh, we're gonna paint them, we're gonna paint them gray.
Yeah.
Those gray, those
Yeah.
are the, and Knucklehead takes the blue,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's in the wrong spot, I get all those calls.
It's so much easier to keep it all the same, right?
Yes,
Kevin, so is this, the can on the right, has that been painted that color?
yes,
So what color do they come in?
they come black,
Any color you want, as long as it's black.
as long as it's black. So from purely a, ease of operation, black would be the easiest, now that we think we can find the black tops.
Right.
Whether or not it's the best look or not. And if we're painting them, it doesn't matter which color we paint them, that's all the same as well.
I'd like to close this up, so we'll stick then with this combination as we discussed. I think it works fine. To me, again, it kind of fits my upscale image or desire for the boardwalk. And again, I'm mindful, or I want us to be mindful that when Public Works changed the white iconic benches, swingback benches, from white to brown 15 years ago, all hell broke loose. And so I think with this, I don't think people are as interested perhaps, but I think there's a good rationale for doing this. And so hopefully there won't be as much negative feedback.
Yeah, I wouldn't have believed it until just the other night, I'm talking to some neighbors about, we're looking at it, because why would you ever, we know the blue is,
Yeah. There's gonna be some things said about the disappearance of the light blue.
Somebody's concerned about the color of the transport.
Yeah.
All righty, very good, very good.
This will get us the ability to get what the board asks us to do, implement it right away. If next year, or however we want to look at, say, well, we want to really upgrade it to something that looks a lot nicer, we have time to do that, but we get the program going. Yeah. Good for me, thank you.
All righty, so we're gonna move on to the next topic, and that is beach patrol reports, and then the summaries of the CDP visitor, community, and visitor surveys, and the city's Envision surveys. How I look at all those, took quite a bit of time to assemble them, so hope you can appreciate them. But what I hope the value of them is that as we move forward to later today, talking about what possible amenities do we want to add to the boardwalk, if any, that what are the people saying? What are our visitors? What is our business community saying and everything? What is our beach patrol saying? So if we just start with the Envision and those summaries, we don't need to refer to all of them. But in the Envision, there were just two comments: keep it clean and safe at any cost, put covers on the lights along the boardwalk. The business survey, actually the business survey, community survey, and visitor survey. I found all somewhat comparable. I don't know if y'all had time to look at them. There were, and you can help me out there with your perception, there were a lot of compliments on the clean beach, the clean boardwalk. There were some concerns about safety and police, and they appreciated the police presence on the boardwalk. They wanted to see maybe a few more police. They wanted recycling on the beach. There was a good number of comments saying something about the undesirables on the boardwalk, disgusting people and things like that. people showering on the boardwalk, changing rooms. So some of the comments kind of reinforce the need for family restrooms and going forward and changing rooms, things like that. There were concerns about the boardwalk being unsafe in the evening. They wanted longer hours for boards on the, dogs on the boardwalk, things like that. So other than the recommendations we've already put forward with adding security cameras, looking at the lights, looking at the restrooms and changing rooms, I didn't glean a lot of new information out of these things, and I wanted to get you all's interpretation of these reports.
I walk the boardwalk every day or every evening, and I'm noticing that in the south end, dog users are not picking up on the boardwalk itself. And perhaps the city may consider putting small stations there with dog bags, poop bags there. I've seen that on other seaside towns. You know, whether it's ignorance of the dog owner or mere fact that the dog owner's run out of bags, I don't know. But perhaps it's something that could be put under consideration.
We can add that when we get to the amenities thing.
Right.
Okay. Anything else perceived by these visitor surveys? Somebody here says more restrooms on the north and south of the boardwalk. So we're addressing that. We're not really doing anything to the south, but somebody wants bonfires on the beach later, and they want later hours for walking the beaches at night. I mean, we've got, I think you're allowed to walk the beach till 1 a.m., I think. And then they want painting on the beach. And I have
Painting
no,
what?
I don't know.
Trash cans.
So, allow dogs on the beach. Well, maybe they may. So I think what I found deficient in this, I think this is a neat survey, and but what I'm missing for some of it is the explanation. You know, that I don't feel safe. Well, what does that mean? Where? In the south narrow portion, in the north, on the beach, at night at 1 a.m. You know, I'm missing kind of that information, but, well, we can keep all these documents as references.
One question, if we do the changing rooms, do you know, have we gotten to a point where, will there be any charge for people to use them, or will they be just provided as a service? Free, no charge to use the changing rooms. And there'll be showers there and things, and a caretaker will have to keep them clean, I
I
guess.
don't know that we plan on any showers in that design.
No showers.
So, right, they got the shower.
Just a room to
Shower
change
across,
from your
right.
bathing suit into some other clothes.
So you can rinse off, cross
On
in
the
shower
shower
tower,
towers, yeah.
walk in the changing room.
Okay.
That's the philosophy.
Okay.
The seasonal report again, these are for kind of enlightenment for our discussion coming up about what different might we propose for the boardwalk. The notes from the beach patrol, I think pertaining to us is primarily the safety and operational items for consideration. These look somewhat similar to what was proposed last year. Public announcement system, well, we've already addressed that. Increase the number of rinse stations. We have done that, but he says change all foot showers to full body showers. I don't know if we want to entertain that or not. The original boardwalk committee 10 years ago decided that the showers, tall showers, would only be in the commercial areas, not in the residential area. And so that is what has ruled the roost. Coin machines in our realm, placement of signs about digging. I think that's kind of just something the city manager can consider. Installation of the travel lane, we've already made our recommendations there. That's a hard sell, but we've made our recommendations. Increase the number of smoking locations at the back of the beach. I don't know if that's our thing or not.
Did we reduce that last year?
What?
Did we reduce the number that we had last year? Seems like there was less.
Are the number of designated smoking areas at the toe of the dune the same as in previous years and same as years that we started with this? Or have we reduced
Less
it?
than when we started. I don't know if it was phased, you know,
Okay.
to a year, that was,
Uh-huh.
but I know it is less than what the original.
So I thought,
So it sounds like maybe the Beach Patrol's perception is that there's an impact on reducing the number. So we're just gonna leave that in your hands. If you want an opinion, then certainly come back to it. And then increase the number of moving mat walkways, and we know that we've recommended something similar, and there's a program there. So I think through the reports of the Beach Patrol, we're pretty much on board.
Question?
Yeah,
There's a dramatic increase in the tent takedowns in 2019 from 2018?
that's weird.
Like tripled or doubled?
Yeah, so the Beach Patrol added an additional staff person, part-time staff person to look at that. So when the individual doing that was off, there was no one actually, they had days off, there was no one actually on that spot. So it added an extra person, so it's.
There was more enforcement in
Yeah.
2019. So, but people are still bringing, obviously with this type of a number, a lot of people are bringing tents.
They are.
Yeah, so it's interesting. They're popular. Yeah. They take a lot of real estate up. So,
before we move on, is there anything else on these? Again, these are for enlightenment for future conversation. Just real quick, I know Sharon and Kevin are gonna leave us in a few minutes. Pat Kaluzi, Commissioner, had sent me a note on this Coat Check Mobile and asked me to look into it. But then through Kevin, I found that, I think Sharon, you had taken care of it. This was just FYI, this was a proposal by a company to put lockers on the boardwalk for people to use and everything. And Sharon, I think Kevin said you turned it down, this guy's offer or something.
Yeah, so I think, at least at this point, we're, let's try the changing rooms and see if that does something, for the public's attention and not have that right now.
So that might come in apropos later when we start talking about commercialism, boardwalk and things like that.
is part of the consideration the real estate to put the lockers?
Correct.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is enter into that conversation. You all are getting ready to leave. Thank you very much. We're good the
Thank
rest of the meeting. We appreciate your presence and participation. So let's move into the section of the meeting where we're talking about amenities. If you recall last time, we kind of initiated the conversation, and I think I was dominant on some things that we were looking forward, and I distributed a sheet earlier. I think what was reflected in our last minutes is that we were gonna have more discussion on possible amenities to recommend to the commissioners for consideration in this budget or future budgets. And I think, to me, the biggest thing that came out of the last meeting was somebody's comment on, rather than seeking a whole bunch of new things, let's put the primary focus, number one focus on maintenance of things. And so I would like this committee to agree to that as the number one priority. Maintenance, that everything is cleanly painted and fresh and everything, because you look through these slides for these categories of different things, and I think maybe you'll agree with me that all those little towns that have the cleanest restrooms, that are painted and maintained, and the boards replaced on the boardwalk are just sharp looking and
First impressions.
inviting. Yes. So maintenance would be the biggest focus. And this is besides the family restrooms, the changing rooms, and all those things, the second floor for the beach patrol that are already in the works. The security cameras, things like that, they're already in the works. Maintenance is the number one thing. Is there anything else that people would like to have considered?
Another comment on maintenance is that if it looks nice and it's well presented, people have a tendency to take care of it better.
true.
I have found with renters, if it looks shabby, then they just join in with the party. So I agree, maintenance is a good thing to address.
And as I said last time, is how I was trying to approach some of this is how do we want the visitors to perceive us? And when they leave us, how are they gonna describe us? Clean, safe, friendly, those things. So that's where
Right.
maintenance comes in, number one.
Yep.
I wanted to pass forward a recommendation that they look into establishing some kind of drone law to deal with drones going over the beach or
Yeah.
boardwalk or something. I don't know what the code is, I don't know, but all I want to do is pass a generic look into it so that it does not become a problem in the future. I had seen a lot of those towns have boardwalk beach maps that are online. And I'd like to make a recommendation that we do something comparable for, a beach tab on the, and then attendance, we've already mentioned attendance. And then possibility of AEDs available outside the normal hours of the beach patrol and outside of the off-season. And then maybe water fill stations, as we replace water fountains. I looked up one company that has an integral water fountain but also it goes up a little higher and you can fill your water bottles, just in this day and age, that kind of thing. So those are some things that I was particularly interested in as putting forward for considerations.
I know in the airport, the water bottle tower at the water fountain is used quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
And, cause you can't bring water in, you gotta pull water out of your bottle and then you go in and fill it up again.
Oh,
But I do think that a lot of people would definitely use a water bottle refill area.
So none of these things I cited are critical, but I'd like just to have them on the radar. And again, these slides, I think, will be a reference for years to come. We'll be able to compare other towns and see. Is there anything else that excites anybody that?
Other than the poop bags, the dog bags.
That's right.
And I second that because I walk my dogs and I walk them on the off season and whatnot. And for me, who takes care of my dogs, it's shocking to
Yeah,
see.
it's terrible.
I mean, we won't even let our dogs pee on the planters and on the sidewalks walking to the beach. And people just let them, and because we think kids are gonna walk up and touch that stuff.
Exactly.
It seems to be a hot topic all over the area, not just in town, but, some of the neighborhoods right outside of town. You follow these forums and everybody's complaining, and I think the complaints are real too. I do personally see an upswing in irresponsible pet owners.
I agree. I mean, I love the privilege of being able to walk my dogs, but there's a lot of people that don't consider it a privilege and don't care. I lived in a condo where we had a dog run and people let him go in the hallways and they would say, I don't care, we have cleaners to do it, let them take care of it, I'm not bending over.
There's a few issues involved with this too. I mean, there's a lot of people who are worried about disease, and that's pretty obvious. But then there's an increase in the fox population. Apparently,
There is.
foxes like the dog feces or something like that. So there are a few citizens I've talked to in town that are concerned about this and are kind of watching the boardwalk closely and applauding people when they do the right thing and calling them out when they do the wrong thing.
So I want to interpret that. So the cleaning up or preventing of dog poop on the boardwalk could help promote fewer foxes or something.
It's a public health issue. I mean, more than just aesthetics and annoying.
I mean, I've seen the foxes around Country Club, especially during the construction over at the new school. There was a time that we saw 3 and 4 foxes running at a time. There was a picture just recently on Next Door
I saw it.
of 2 foxes on somebody's patio here.
Anything else that we want to put forward for consideration?
Maybe put forth a recommendation to the animal issues that they include the boardwalk in their discussions about picking up after dogs, pawn it off on them.
I know, and I've listened to them, I think they are aware and they do include that, but, it doesn't hurt to mention it, right?
I think it's more pronounced on the boardwalk and on the commercial streets than it is maybe in country club estates. I think there are more people who come in with their pets on a daily basis. They come in
agree,
from out
I
of town and they walk the commercial district and the boardwalk,
Yep.
and not all of them are
I
doing the
totally
right
agree.
thing.
And in the neighborhoods, you have a lot of grass, and a lot of places it can disappear. On the boardwalk and the commercial areas, you don't have as much.
I like to see the same dates for bicycles and dogs on the boardwalk. Now it's two separate dates and it gets confusing.
I listened to the parking committee talk about wanting to have things consistent, and I know that the commissioners have talked about that many times. I do agree. I think that, having a different date and time for everything, the more consistent we can be, just like with colors, the better. I totally agree.
It's a difference of 2 weeks on each end. I think
It
the
is.
dogs are allowed on the boardwalk, what, October 1st or is it
On the
November 1st?
first, yeah, and the other thing's the 15th or something.
And it's
Yeah.
May 15 to September
Yeah.
15. So would the committee be recommending going from May 1st to November 1st?
I think we need to put that on as a separate agenda topic so that we can advertise it, so that
Yeah.
everybody can come.
No, I agree, because I do believe people have something to say, yeah.
I can tell you the old argument was, and I see this in personally as in the spring and the fall, you get a large number of senior citizens, and many of them stay on the boardwalk. And for a lot of these people, one of the reasons they come down here is to ride bicycles, and the only place they want to ride is the boardwalk. So it would be in some ways punitive towards them to say, I'm sorry guys, but if you come 2 weeks too early this year again, you're not going to be able to ride on the boardwalk. It's definitely.
Well, we can put that as a separate agenda topic, if you don't mind, and everything. I'm leaning toward leaving things alone. All signs are just redone, but to be able to give notice to the public and anybody else, and the rest of our members, I think we'll do that. So if there's nothing else, then I would like to include my things, and then plus the dog poop bag dispenser as additional things for consideration to the commissioners for possibly even this year's upcoming budget. Anything else? All righty, thank you. Next thing we want to go to is consider any changes to boardwalk design should a catastrophic event occur and the boardwalk needs replacing. This is something different than what we just went through. This exercise we just went through is, what are some things that maybe we want or need or would like to consider for the future. This topic is following a scenario of another Sandy or a big storm that takes out most of the boardwalk. And we've had that happen many a time, and we've always expedited the repair. And the expedited repair have always been exactly in the same footprint and template as before. So this is kind of an exercise in planning ahead, looking ahead. Are there things that we would change on the boardwalk because of a storm? Because if we do want to change them, then we need to start now for planning and analyzing and see what the options are and the costs are and see whether it's even permitted or authorized. Because remember, we've got DNREC, Department of Natural Resources, rules the beach, so to speak. So did anybody want to offer anything new or different?
I think in the past, whenever the boardwalk has been decimated, it was when we had the old boardwalk, the substructure under the boardwalk was wooden, and in the recent replacement of the boardwalk, we've now got a substructure of concrete. So if we ever did incur a catastrophic damage to the boardwalk, it would only be the boards. the concrete, I think, and the pylons that were put in the last rebuild wouldn't be touched. I think they're there for good, and it would just be a case of replacing the boards.
We did design the new boardwalk for better storm survivability, because it's got 20 or 30-foot deep concrete piers, and it's got rebar, and it's got all kinds of stuff, so it should have better survivability. Doesn't mean it can't succumb, but even if the substructure succumbed, my guess is that the engineers then would be charged with redesigning it and rebuilding it and everything. But besides the boards and the decking on top, and we have an example of that being damaged in the very north of the boardwalk, four or 5 years ago, the stores. But besides that, what else could be consumed? The showers, the foot showers, the dune crossings, the rule signs, access onto and off the boardwalk and things like that. So here's some of mine. See, and again, we don't have to agree to any of these as long as we say they're maybe worthy of just putting forward for consideration, and then let them decide, what's important. Some of the things I wrote down were review the vehicular accesses for sufficiency. For instance, would it be worthwhile having a vehicle entry at Prospect Avenue so that you're starting and getting your vehicles on from the beginning
To the beach or the boardwalk?
to the boardwalk?
There isn't an entrance to the beach on Prospect now?
To the beach there is,
beach,
but
there is,
not
but
the
not the
boardwalk.
boardwalk.
Not to the boardwalk.
Right, it's Queen Street.
Queen
there.
Street, I got it.
So is that a possibility? And it may or may not, they may not be interested in it, administration, or there may not be enough room for it. But if there's any thought that they would like it, they need to be thinking about it now. So that's one idea. The other is a dune retaining wall at Prospect Avenue as a way to control sand encroachment. When you come down on the Surrey or your bicycle going south, you get off at Prospect Street, you make that right turn, if you will, onto the sidewalk. It's almost always covered with sand because the dune is way too big. And the way the law is written, we cannot carve away that dune. However, if a storm took it away, is there anything we could do to help in the future with sand encroachment? My thought is if you had a retaining wall there, then you should always be able to clean the sidewalk periodically and keep any sands that overflow. But right now, any sands that overflow, we're not allowed to touch it. So that is a thought. Just a generic thought is, of course, advance the restroom, family restroom, beach patrol observation, speakers, Moby mats, security, advance all those now, but be prepared in case a storm came that we would be ready. I'm not sure what the holdup is on the security camera things. It seems to be a difference of opinion with the IT and the police department that we should get resolved now or soon. Cause I'd like to get it implemented soon, but if not, it would be ready for post-storm. Lighting, is there anything different we want to do with lighting? For instance, bollards in the south narrow area and the north area, like the pedestrian crossing here. Would we do something different that brings the lights down? We heard one comment about light caps with minimum light pollution. And one thing with the lighting is, we could even consider bollards for the whole thing, who knows? But the problem is, they're allowing these small cell towers up there. And once they go up, they're never coming down, in my opinion. They're gonna be there. And they need the height and everything. So you can't, even if you could do that bollard type lighting system, it would not be feasible in the center section. And who knows, maybe Verizon wants to go north to south, the entirety of it. I don't know all of it. I think they're just primarily focusing on the wider commercial, but I don't know. So lighting, light caps that prevent light pollution, the handicap dune crossings to facilitate adequate handicap sitting areas. Now that's already our recommendation. But with this last beach nourishment, nothing happened. And I think that if we have a catastrophic event, then we ought to design it into it, that we get those back again. I don't know if we want to upgrade the street signs or the rule signs. If you looked at some of these pictures, some of them have gold leaf signs, and they're just all pretty. It's like an upgrade from what we have. You know, whether we want to consider that. And then the north tip of the boardwalk, regarding bicycle, pedestrian, vehicular access. I don't know if you could see, Kevin, when I mentioned something about the master plan, and they had that tree in the pedestrian way and all that stuff. I mentioned the vehicular entrance there, and he said, no, and that's their decision, but we know so far they have been using that area to go on and off. If they're gonna continue using it, then they ought to, consider it, put it in as a buy. Otherwise, replace everything as is, the pavilions, the decking, water fountain, showers, water fill state, whatever.
I agree. I think we've got a good boardwalk.
Yeah.
We really do.
Yeah.
The city's done well, done very well. I think we provide everything that anyone expects when they come to the beach.
Are these something that you'd be comfortable be passing on, or I can do it as an individual too, you know?
I think I kind of do it just east of the boardwalk, because if we're going to do the cameras, then we might not have the ability to do a wireless setup. Might have to be a copper setup. We have to run the wires down along.
Do some extra, and I think during construction and design, somebody had mentioned that, putting an extra conduit or two in, so for future use.
Yeah, who knows?
We never did it, but. Anything else that, in terms of a catastrophic something?
Presumably, you may want to redesign the beach patrol headquarters there, possibly separate out the public restrooms from the beach patrol headquarters.
That is already in the works. Yep. They're looking at, our last meeting, I think, you weren't there. They're looking at using the beach patrol, current beach patrol headquarters for 2 family restrooms, leaving enough room for a medical center for the beach patrol, and then building an entire second story for beach patrol. And then they were even talking about a 3rd story for an observation deck. So that seems to be all, design-wise, it's all in the works. Now they're gonna do Delaware Avenue renovations with new family restrooms, accessible family restrooms, some changing rooms at Delaware, hopefully for next summer. And then the Baltimore Avenue the following summer. So it's kind of a 2-year program. So things are in the works. And thanks to you all, the impetus is from this committee.
3-story building, that'll change the view from the street.
Absolutely, and
I
guys
kind of
spoke,
agree with you, but
guys spoke up,
You
he
can
was very
only-
disappointed, and my preference would have been to additionally look at tearing down the building and starting from scratch to see if we could build on each side and leave something in the center or something, and I got invited to after they were already pretty much done, so they didn't seem interested in redoing it.
But if there were a catastrophic event, there's no way you would want to rebuild it in its current configuration. It would
Oh,
probably scrap.
back to this conversation, you're right.
Well, the third story would just be an
Well, so that's,
observation.
so that's a good point. That if the buildings are taken down,
Redesign.
consider redesign to optimize the views, as has been the position of this committee.
is beach replenishment done?
Yeah. The storm, we had a
Storm came.
nor'easter afterwards, took a lot
I
of the
read
sand
that.
away, yeah, but
Very
it's likely out there. Are we okay with this topic?
Yes.
Okay. We got a couple more topics.
And just one
These-
last thing, I hate to
Yeah,
backtrack.
no, go ahead.
Last year, or the year before, we had DENREC come in, I think, and the scientists were able to explain how beach erosion occurs and what the the logic is behind the rock jetties. If there were a catastrophic event, I think that maybe should be re-examined. Not saying it should be changed at all, but, you know, knowing what the state knows now, with respect to the rock jetties, you know, what would be the best plan to prevent further beach erosion?
Okay. We'll add that in. Thank you. And we're getting close to the end here. A couple of things. These are really, we could take action today, but I really was interested in introducing them to the committee. And then maybe we can follow up at the next meeting and get more members to contemplate. And that is discuss or consider making position statements on. I personally believe that it's helpful for the city administration to have policy statements to help them decide things, you know? That if the commissioners had said absolutely no wireless antennas on the east side, then that's how the city administration applies the, you know, and analyzes the application. That's not a good example. But one thing would be, if you recall, the end of Rehoboth Avenue is somewhat open visually, okay? And we've said our guiding principles, clean, safe, friendly, do no harm. Aesthetics is important. This part of aesthetics is the view shed, keeping open views and things like that. The end of Rehoboth Avenue is one of these areas. If you recall, I mentioned earlier that the original Boardwalk Committee purposely did not have shower towers at the end of Rehoboth Avenue to try to protect that view shed. And so we've been very protective of it. At the last meeting, Kevin indicated when he was talking about the permit applications for Verizon for wireless antennas on the boardwalk, is he's not allowing any at the end of Rehoboth Avenue, okay? But I would like to see us do a resolution or something, like a formal statement saying we don't think certain things should go at the end of Rehoboth Avenue. It should be protected, and here's why. You know, like a resolution. Whereas the boardwalk committee's charged with trying to maintain the boardwalk as a major asset, blah, 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 and things like that, that I think that would be a worthwhile statement. And I wanted to get your feedback on whether y'all.
Isn't that whole area gonna change though with the introduction of that new hotel? That's gonna take up that one corner, the south side of Rehoboth Avenue, right at the end of Rehoboth Avenue.
Yeah, but we can't prevent anything there. But what we can prevent is the VIA is installing a historic marker. Remember,
Right.
I gave a presentation, and that's on the west side of the boardwalk. What if they or another group comes back and wants 4 signs on the east side of the boardwalk? You know, it gets to be too much, I think, and that's where I think that if we agree and create a policy, then city administration and the mayor commissioners can agree or not, but then they would have at least a policy that says, see, we can't keep putting more and more and more signs there. We're gonna mess up our view shed.
But then they're gonna go back and say, well, precedents.
Oh, they can
occurred.
do that for anything. Absolutely.
Forever and ever.
Is it worth pursuing or?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And here you have commercialization. Would that be a
Well,
part of the policy?
no, I'm looking at that as maybe a similar but separate. For instance, maintaining the aesthetic, let me finish with that, newspaper boxes. Okay,
Sure.
Right now they're proposing an ordinance that limits the number of newspaper boxes and limits the number of locations to specific locations where you have to apply for a location and you get a location. There's just dozens of locations all over town with either 1 box, 2 box. In front of Louis,
It's shocking how
there's
many.
14 boxes. In front of the post office, there's 14 boxes. They're working on something, but in the meantime, until they get that done, I thought maybe part of the message from this committee could be, we're protective of the end of Rehoboth Avenue, and for example, protective of other areas. If we don't want to see any newspaper boxes on the boardwalk, and I would say within 50 feet of the boardwalk, so that they're not at street ends and things like that. Because if you go back and you look at the categories of photos of other towns, you'll see newspaper boxes on their boardwalk.
And they're talking about doing like an 8 or 10 or 12 cube kind of big thing.
Right.
That could actually be obstructive.
Yeah.
And I think 50 feet is not that far. I think that's reasonable.
So they're not contemplating it, and what they're proposing, or building and licensing is proposing, is that they're in town or different locations. But I just thought it would be worthwhile to have a statement.
I agree. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
So that's something, if I
Draft something up.
pencil
Yeah.
a resolution, we take it up next time.
Certainly.
Maybe moot next time, but
And I think they cause more trash, and, you know, put that in there as far as it's not just aesthetics.
what causes more traffic?
Having those
All those
boxes there,
boxes,
people
yeah.
just take it out.
Newspaper box.
Yeah, and just, you know,
They're unsightly.
yeah.
Especially the ones with all the ads.
Things can blow in
Again,
out.
this is coming back to view shed, and trash is
Yeah.
part of the view
Yeah.
shed. The other thing I wanted to talk with you about briefly is commercialization.
So I really don't think the boardwalk should look like Route 1, where it's just so cluttered with commercialization and these neon signs flashing, obstructing your view so you can't drive at night. They flash in your face, and I just think, I like the fact that it doesn't have a lot of commercialization and it's natural and.
But there is code in place at the moment that a premises can only have so many signs on the boardwalk side and also the street sides. So I don't know if you want to expand on that.
Well, let's start with what is commercialization?
You could paint things on
Yeah.
the boardwalk like they
You know,
do on the
this-
bogey bags.
This company came to the city and said, we would like to be able to put these on the boardwalk, for instance. You know, so this is a private company
Yeah.
wanting to put something on the boardwalk. And you heard Sharon talk with the company, and they were not, she was not amenable to it or something, so it didn't happen. But, again, if there was a policy, recommended policy from this committee, that might help the commissioners and city administration. Look at the screen real quick to see how we can define commercialization. This is,
Yep.
and this is an imperfect organization of slides, because it's hard to tell what's what sometime. But there's signs on there advertising businesses. This is actually a surf school that's on the beach.
Yeah.
There's their stand, there's their clothes, and there's their,
That's New
tent.
Jersey, right?
yeah.
Yeah. My family has a house on the Jersey Shore there. And
Yeah.
it's really commercialized.
A lot of these companies, if you recall last time, some of you, Frank, I don't think you were here last time, Dick Byrne, I think Commissioner Dick Byrne and Charlie sent me a note on Coca-Cola giving grants for recycling.
Yeah.
Okay, and in fact, we'll see. And so here, there's some of the things, you know. So you got to beware, because what you're getting might have the fine print that says we're going to put our names on there. And then look at Coca-Cola. You know, so all these things. This is how they got a lot of these things financed. You know, which personally offends me, having names.
I can't imagine our boardwalk looking like
Yeah.
this.
Commercialization. This is, I don't know what you call these, TVs advertising, or electronic billboards.
Yeah, that's what's on
You
Route
know,
1.
look at it.
Yeah.
Now that's public service announcement, makes sense.
And the only commercialization that I can see that I would be in favor of is some kind of Wi-Fi thing where, you know, if the big belly cans, if somebody wanted to provide, you know, free Wi-Fi service, and you log in and you get like, well, Shell Brothers opening
Oh,
page.
yeah.
I think that'd be a case, because it's in the ether. It's not a physical commercialization. It's in the, what's the
It's
word?
electronic.
Public domain.
It's in the
In the
air.
cloud.
Right, in the cloud, right?
And
But aside from
I don't
that,
know
any
how
physical
that works. Do they
manifestations?
want more antennas? Because that would,
I mean, right now, we've got 2 beach stand operators, Katz and Lyman. And to their credit, throughout all these years, they've never once that I know have been tempted up to say, well, we're gonna let Coca-Cola
Yeah.
sponsor our
Cabinets,
umbrellas,
yeah,
and they're gonna pay for it, and then we're gonna get advertising. To their credit, they've been doing it, but I don't know that there's an ordinance as of yet that would necessarily prevent
Right.
someone from doing that in the future.
Should there be?
Yeah.
So,
I think so.
Maybe this policy incorporates something like that.
there possibly is if you consider off-site signs. You know, if, for instance, if business X is on Wilmington Avenue and they want to put an off-premise sign on Rehoboth Avenue directing people over, under the current code, I don't believe they're able to do that yet.
Right. And this is more like a chamber sign here. I think it's got events and things like that. But here's one on the middle of the, probably Wildwood Boardwalk or something, advertising a drink somewhere. I don't know if this is commercialization or not. It's a carnival, what do you call these things, booths. All the signage and electronic billboards and things like this. And so again, why I brought this up was that offer of a Coca-Cola grant. Free money for the trade-off sounds good, but is it really something that we want? I'm just gonna. This is
You
that.
see it on Jolly Trolley, their little trailer has all
Right,
kinds of
right.
advertisements.
But do we want that kind of thing on the boardwalk?
On the boardwalk or the beach,
There's an instance right now, Main Street back in the spring did a thing where, and I sponsored one of the banners, and they're very tastefully done. They're up and down Rehoboth Avenue, and the businesses spend whatever it is, $800, and get a banner put up there.
$475.
Yeah, that's right. And they're so tastefully done that I don't think they stick out very much. But while that program might be okay, I don't necessarily think it would be okay for the boardwalk. In other words, if Main Street were to come and say, hey, we want to do the same thing we did on Rehoboth Avenue and do it up on the boardwalk, I think unfortunately the answer would have to be no.
I don't think
I think
they
it's
can
all-
consider that.
it's
You're
all-
not talking about doing it on the sidewalk in between the street and the businesses. There's some lampposts there doing some other signs.
I see that as maybe
So if
two prongs to it. One would be that we could react to, I guess, is do we want banners up and down the boardwalk? And two, if you'd allow it, do you want sponsorships of it? So I kind of,
my point is, if there's an ordinance in the works, you might have to consider the fact that there are groups that work well and work closely with the city, like Main Street and
Right.
the Chamber,
Right.
but you don't know, you might get some PT Barnum that sees this as wide open territory and they
Right.
want to commercialize the entire boardwalk,
Right.
so it's a fine line to walk.
Did you research that thing I sent you about the art fair?
yeah. Steve came to me and said something about a Rehoboth Art League. Wait a minute.
Okay.
Said something about Rehoboth Art League is having a Memorial Day weekend
One day.
craft fair on the boardwalk, which surprised me. But nobody came, and I found the literature on it, and nobody came to us, so.
So the city's approved it? Like, obviously?
There's advertising and they're selling spaces and everything, and I haven't approached anybody, but, and nobody came to us and asked
they're
their
gonna be setting
opinion.
up booths on the boardwalk?
Yeah, yep, just like
Wow.
you see there.
Wow.
I don't know, it's $300 per tent, and it's only one day, but
Might
it's
set
Memorial Day weekend.
A
And who
bad
gets the
precedent,
money?
I mean, art is
What?
nice, but it
That-
could set a
right,
bad
yeah.
precedent.
Wait,
It's all the money.
Yeah,
So we're letting them use public land to fund it.
it's the way of law.
So Frank, start over again.
It might set a bad precedent. I mean, the arts are nice and they'll have a lot of broad support in the community, but who's to say that you can't have, you know, another group trying to sell their wares and maybe they're nonprofit, maybe
I
they're
mean, we
not.
do have other things, you know, you have the polar plunge and other things that set up tents. There's lots of runs up there,
Right. That's
so it's,
maybe why
not
this issue is
setting
not
precedent.
as clear cut and black and white as we might think. For instance, in other towns, you know, especially if they had a particular district that's struggling economically, they might be tempted to put, you know, the city will sponsor it, but they'll put a list of side businesses on a hanging sign and something like that. And the city or the chamber usually is the impetus behind that. So where do you draw the line? You know, and if you
And how do you do that? Because
Right.
once you let somebody,
Yeah.
then it's hard to say no to somebody else, so. It's gonna turn into.
I mean,
a
Bethany
flea
does,
market.
and it's been very successful for Bethany. They have a big arts fair that's the whole weekend.
Or, you know, in the end, we're just making recommendations. If the commissioners want to approve something like an art festival on the boardwalk, they can vote and by, you know.
This would be
majority.
off-season, not
No, it's
during.
Memorial, Saturday of Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, a big weekend.
Yeah.
So this is really on our
And it's pretty
agenda,
much in the
other
book.
than,
Wow,
other
wow.
than it could be incorporated in
Who
commercialization or
approved that?
something.
I don't know.
So I don't know how to approach it. I can get more information from Sharon and see how it came about and what the program is. You know, how did they choose to do one of the busiest weekends of the year, you know?
Did
Where's
this
it
come
gonna
before the
be?
commissioners at all? I didn't hear
No,
about it.
no. So I'll do some homework and we'll see, you know, what we can do. But I can try to do a draft of a resolution or get some notes on commercialization, try to articulate what it means.
Yes, 'cause, I mean, there are certain events that, you know, universally people can get behind the lifeguard competition, you know? And maybe somebody has not a booth, but a table set up. Is it a business? Is it commercial? Is it in the public good? So I think it warrants further discussion. And I think if you came up with a resolution or an ordinance to recommend, it might be a great idea as far as commercial or statement.
We had a lady outside our building last year using one of the benches to sell homemade jewelry. And the police came down and told her she wasn't allowed. I don't know under what ordinance, but she was made to take it all down. She didn't have a business license, I don't think. So she was told to take it all off and move on. So there must be something that the police are looking at to prevent commercialization sales on the boardwalk.
Well, you're not even allowed to play a guitar with your hat out.
Like
For
that's
1
yeah,
year.
that's peddling.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they had that come up in Ocean City, Maryland with the street
must-
performers.
They assigned them,
And they went to
areas.
court and they have to allow them.
but they assigned them, they have to get a permit to where they can perform.
Right,
that's
in
okay.
that case, you would need a city business license. I mean, currently the code's pretty clear. If you
To
don't have a
sell,
storefront, if you
yeah.
don't have a city business license, then you can't do business in the city.
Yeah. To sell, yeah. At some point, we're gonna have to cross the entertainers on the boardwalk. I'm sure it's gonna happen.
And I
We're
don't
just
think
lucky.
we want to see this on the boardwalk.
No.
I don't necessarily either,
customs.
but I can see people I can see the other side too, where people would say this would. But in the off-season, when it's slow, maybe it would bring people down.
Right,
But this is Memorial Day weekend.
yeah.
The
It's
events,
gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens.
Right?
the events that are happening now around the bandstand seem to be getting more popular as time goes on, and it looks like, at least to me, that they're spilling over to the boardwalk a little bit. So
And is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, that's
I
something.
think it should be discouraged because it's a slippery slope.
Also depends what time of year it is.
So let me get more information on that and then try to listen to the tape here and try to come up with some definition of commercialization, or at least a listing of stuff that we can pick through at our next meeting and try to define it. Again, just as a way to come up with some kind of recommendation or policy to pass on to the city administration and mayor and commissioner, at least our perspective on everything. Anything else? Okay, citizen comment? And anything? Committee member? Good for the good of the order, anything? Plan agenda, content, and meeting dates for committee meetings in 2020. I solicited from the city manager and all the departments on anything they thought might be a potential agenda topic. And I also separately solicited the mayor and commissioners. I didn't get anything from the mayor and commissioners. They're kind of, those that responded are content with what we're doing. A lot of these from Director of Public Works, Kevin, we've already actually already done. So I need to talk with him and clarify, does the committee support construction of a second level on Baltimore Avenue restroom to expand facilities for lifeguards and accessible restrooms and changing room? Well, we've already done that, so I want to go through some of his things.
But did we talk about a third floor?
What? Well, that's what he presented to us at the last meeting.
The last meeting.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's gonna be an entire floor, it might be
Just a deck.
an observation tower.
I got it, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
From IT department, potential items are infrastructure upgrades, power and fiber. We've previously discussed for extending our video systems and possibly implementing a new system such as a blue light system. I didn't know what that was. I looked it up. Blue light system appear to be these little emergency call stations you put
Avon
on.
University
Or
campus
something,
for that,
right,
yeah.
right. So that is something that if they're talking about it, that's fine. I don't know what kind of input they might want from us. Is it a good thing to have a blue light station or is it not a good thing? If you had one at every, how often do you need them? At every street? Well, then you have them every street. Are you kind of subliminally advertising that we're not safe? There's pluses and minuses to some of these things. The Public Works has questions about maintaining access ways and snow fencing, and to me, that's more of a internal discussion there. So I don't have a lot on our future agenda list. That's why I wanted to get anything from you all. Again, I didn't get much from the others. Do we want to meet again in January, or do we want to take a couple months break? Because
With the cold weather, I would vote to take a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
there's nothing, I don't know that there's anything, critical that has to be done. I was trying to push some of this for being ready for the budget talks, because she needs to know now if there's anything that needs to be funded. And again, we kind of give her some ideas for some small price things, but the big ticket items are already in the work
Yeah.
for family restrooms and things like that.
And that's a
So-
big bite for next
Yeah,
year.
yeah, for this year, yeah. So, let me do a list of potential future agenda topics, and then we'll look toward February, March. if
Yep,
that's all
sounds
right.
good.
I mean, if something critical comes up, I will email you. Anything else good of the order?
Nope.
Going. We'll adjourn this meeting at
In March,
10:44 PM. Thank you very much.
I might be out of town in March. I have a trip scheduled.